ZDP 189. I've shown this before, how I sharpen the tip. I always let my finger right along the tip like this, so when my finger pad starts rubbing the stone right here, I know that that tip is directly underneath and I'm getting it sharpened. So if I ever need to pay special attention to the tip, I just do that, running my finger pad along the stone, and I know I'm getting where I need to be. It's not always 100% perfect, but it's close enough, and I've never really had issues with it. So just a little tip for you if you're trying to get your tip sharp. Got a slight burr in the belly. So far I've used this stone on quite a few knives, some Hinkles, O2, D2, ZDP. I've already sharpened once before on this. I'm also going to do Magnacut. It does release grit very quickly. You create this slurry. As you can see, I've got quite a bit of steel in here. It is very friable. I've compared this one to the 220 Norton Waterstone in its friability. 220 Norton is a lot more friable, but this one reminds me of that in the amount of abrasive that it releases as you sharpen. That can be a detriment, especially if you're trying to get a very crisp apex. That slurry rides, this is what I think is happening. The slurry is riding across the apex itself and rounding it out. To avoid that, you can flush the stone often, like right now. You'd want to keep it flushed from all this swarf. Doing that should help minimize that to a point. Although I don't know if you're going to completely get rid of it. You're better off probably letting the stone dry out a little bit so you don't have much water on it, and then do some trailing, edge trailing strokes. Even that may have some unforeseen detriments that I haven't thought of yet, but for me, it hasn't been that big of a deal. I can get over the little bit of roundness that this creates just because I'm always getting a convex edge anyway. Embrace the convexity, I always say. Alright, I got a burr across the whole edge, flip sides. The stone has long since lost its conditioned texture, but it's still quite coarse. I'm going to go ahead and flush this completely. The stone is still quite coarse, even without that conditioned texture on the surface. And the slurry does help create that three-body abrasion. So it makes the stone feel like it's cutting much quicker, which actually it is. for a 600 grit, this is a very fast stone. I just wish it wasn't as friable as it is. I'm afraid using it, you're gonna blow through this guy pretty quickly. So I've already flipped the burr. This little back choil area is always a booger to get to. The speed of the stone does slow down on steels like ZDP 189. It even slowed down on 154 CM. Not as quickly as it plowed through the Hinkle's knives and my O2. Now granted, those knives are very thin comparatively, but the stone just blazed right through those. 154 and this ZDP, you can definitely tell there's a slowdown. Still fast, don't get me wrong. Still very quick. Just not as fast. Before I flip over to the 1500 grit, I want to see how it does with Magnacut. This is a Hogue. I can't remember the Mysto. Yeah, that's the name of it. Not sure if it's even going to cut this steel well. I've never sharpened Magnacut on anything other than diamond and silicon carbide. I have no idea what to expect. Cut the edge off. Hopefully that's not damaging the stone. Got a very small burr. Alright, got a nice sized burr going. Already flipped the burr. I'm gonna spend a little more time on this side. Oh yeah. I'll go ahead and do some back and forth passes, try to cut the bar off, but first I'm going to clean the stone. I used a Nanawa pleating stone, this guy right here. just to clean it off. Doing so actually helps texturize the surface, so it's going to actually be a little more aggressive than when I started out. Usually when you're trying to clean off a burr, you want to get your stone clean. That way you don't have a lot of swarf and impacted steel riding across it. You just have the stone cutting. This is 1500 grit. I'm going to go ahead and start with my ZDP 189 again. Not sure how well it's going to behave. The first time I used ZDP on these stones, I didn't even take it to the 1500 grit. I just left it at 600. Got some stone still, some swarf still stuck in the choil area. Now this stone is really hard. It feels soft underneath your edge, but it's really hard. Any little piece of grit that gets on the stone will start screeching at you. It'll sound like you're running across a grain of sand. I was told this would be a good stone for bevel setting on a razor blade. I have not taken a razor blade to it, although I do have a few. I think that would probably be an ideal use for this guy. The steel itself doesn't feel like it's being cut. I mean, you can see some metal being embedded in the stone, but I don't feel like the stone is cutting very well. It just glides across it. There's plenty of stones that have the same texture, same feedback, but for a 1.5, I should be feeling a little more coarseness. I should feel that stone cutting this steel, and I'm not. I don't know if it's just too hard or just not friable enough. Whatever the case, it just feels like it's burnishing. This happened on not just this knife, but every knife I've put up against it. The O2 especially is a custom heat treat, the whole 9 yards, and I barely got any metal swarf at all embedded in the stone when I took it to this stone. The bevel did polish up nicely like it is now, but I don't feel any burr. There's nothing there. I think it's just burnishing. I don't know if you can see it, but what I'm doing here as I come to this choil area, I'm cocking the knife this way to get right in that choil, and then I'm making a swooping pattern, so it's almost like a U shape as I go through my stroke. The bevel is polishing. It is removing those 600 scratches, it looks like, but again, I think it's just burnishing. Metal on metal. It's just shining it up. Once again, clean the stone off with my Nanowa cleaning stone. The stone feels a little creamier, but like the ZDP, this Magnacut is just skating along. It's just gliding across the surface like glass. I am applying pressure here. Let's see if the stone releases any abrasive. Nope. Just a little bit of slurry, and most of it is steel. I can still see the scratches pretty well in that bevel. I'm not going to bother trying to get them all out. Again, I'm applying some pressure here. What I'm doing here is I'm just alternating my pressure. I'm starting down here near the heel, and as I go through it, I'm just kind of with a slight torque of my right wrist, I'm slowly increasing that pressure all along the edge. So that's why you see it. Well, I can demonstrate a little better on this clean side. You'll see the swarf marks start here, and then they'll slowly work their way out. And that's as I increase my pressure just by torquing my wrist that way until I get down to the tip. And then obviously you can see that. For stropping, just a leather strop with some white compound. do believe you guys can see this. I'm just going to do my standard 3-cut test. That is 107. 106. 96. 117. 138. 150. Some averages on the Hogue come out to 103. On the Spyderco, 135. The Hogue seemed to sharpen a little easier than the ZDP. I don't know what the culprit is there against these stones. So some final thoughts on these guys. I do like this 600 a lot. I wish it wasn't as friable as it is, but you can minimize wear by keeping the stone rinsed. As that slurry builds up, you're not only sharpening and wearing down the steel of your knife, you're also wearing down the stone itself. If you keep it flushed, it helps minimize that to a point. You know, there's a point that, you know, it's not going to really matter. The stone's friable, it's going to wear. But the more slurry you have on it, I think the more it's going to also abrade the stone and cause the stone to wear faster. So keep it flush. That should help minimize that, as well as keep from rounding your apex so much. It's very aggressive in terms of speed. I do like how quickly it sharpens pretty much most steels I've put against it. ZDP and 154 CM kind of gave it a little pause in its speed, but nothing tremendous. It feels really coarse. It's got a kind of scratchy feel. As that slurry builds up, you get that sandy slurry underneath, and it helps kind of glide it along. Overall, I like it. I like it a lot. I don't think I'll purchase one, but I do like it. The 1500 grit, I'm not a big fan of. It doesn't feel like it's cutting the steel. It's super hard. I think it's just burnishing, honestly. As you get the metal embedded in the stone, that metal on metal is just causing the bevel to polish up and shine. I feel like the steel is getting no benefit from this stone. Talking to the owner, he said flattening it was definitely a chore because of how hard this stone is. He uses loose silicon carbide powder like I do on a sheet of glass, and he said it just took forever to get this thing flattened and trued. I like the bases that they come with. They've got rubber feet to help them from skidding, and then they've got the cleaning stones that also come with them. I'm not sure what this stuff is made out of. It's like a chalk or something, I'm not sure. But it does clean the stone really well. I like the cleaning stone that comes with it. The only problem is, as you clean the stone off, it does impact into the cleaning stone itself. So if you were to use this on the 1500 grit and then say jump over to a 10,000 grit, use that same stone to clean it with, possibility of grit contamination there. I'm not a big proponent of grit contamination causing problems, but for those who are looking for a true mirror polish, that could definitely be something to worry about. All in, 600 grit's a win for me. 1500 grit, not so much. Hope that was comprehensive enough for you guys. If you have any questions or comments, as always, you can leave them down below. I appreciate y'all watching. Have a good one.